5 minutes ago, the future of the British monarchy was rewritten behind closed doors, shattering every royal protocol, destroying decades of calculated power struggles, and exposing a devastating divide inside Buckingham Palace that was never meant to see the light of day. King Charles did not simply issue a routine royal commendation, assign a ceremonial duty, or offer a symbolic gesture to the public. In a sudden, clandestine gathering that left senior aides paralyzed with shock, the king formally signed a legally binding succession declaration that names Prince William and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, as his exclusive, absolute successors, placing the full weight, moral authority, and operational command of the crown entirely in their hands while completely cutting out Queen Camilla. The atmosphere inside the room turned instantly lethal. Confidential files vanished into locked briefcases, palace security stood guard outside heavy wooden doors, and when the king finished speaking, a suffocating silence fell over the room as eyes turned toward a stunned Camilla, whose decades of carefully built influence vanished in a single sentence. Before we dive into the terrifying confrontation that erupted immediately after the doors were locked, make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on all notifications, and stay tuned, because what was leaked from this private palace summit changes everything we thought we knew about the royal family forever. To understand how the British monarchy reached this unprecedented point of internal collapse, one must look closely at the deep-seated rivalries, historic betrayals, and calculated power grabs that have quietly festered within the royal household for decades. What transpired behind the sealed doors of Buckingham Palace was not a sudden impulse by King Charles, but rather the explosive culmination of a toxic power struggle between two competing royal factions, the traditionalist, ambition-driven circle surrounding Queen Camilla, and the modern, fiercely protective household of Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales. For years, palace insiders whispered about an uneasy truce existing between Clarence House and Kensington Palace, but beneath the polished public smiles and coordinated ceremonial appearances laid an intense battle for the very soul and future of the crown. Ever since King Charles ascended to the throne, the internal dynamics of the institution underwent a seismic shift. Queen Camilla, having spent decades rehabilitating her public image following the tragic aftermath of the 1990s royal scandals, worked tirelessly to consolidate her influence within the palace walls. Surrounded by a loyal network of seasoned courtiers and media advisors, Camilla sought to ensure that her position as queen consort was not merely symbolic, but packed with genuine institutional authority. Senior aides loyal to her household began quietly shaping royal schedules, influencing key patronage assignments, and positioning her as the indispensable right hand to the king. However, this aggressive expansion of influence did not go unnoticed by Prince William, who from an early age had been conditioned to protect the legacy of his late mother, Princess Diana, while preparing himself for his inevitable destiny as sovereign. Prince William and Catherine approached their roles with a fundamentally different strategy, one rooted in absolute discipline, immense public popularity, and a commitment to modernizing the monarchy. As the Prince and Princess of Wales, William and Catherine grew into the most powerful assets the royal family possessed, commands that drew vast global admiration and unprecedented media devotion. Their rising stature created a silent yet suffocating tension inside the palace corridors. Leaked reports from high-ranking royal correspondents indicate that as Catherine's public trust soared to historical highs, subtle attempts were made from within rival palace factions to curb her visibility, delay her major national initiatives, and alter transition planning documents to preserve senior authority elsewhere. The friction reached a critical boiling point over the management of internal palace affairs and the long-term vision for the institution. Whispers of a divided court began leaking into exclusive media circles. Insiders claimed that instructions issued by Prince William's office were frequently subjected to bureaucratic delays, secondary reviews, and quiet pushback from advisors aligned with the Queen's household. The core issue was constitutional authority and the inevitable shift of power. While King Charles attempted to manage the delicate equilibrium between his wife's ambitions and his son's constitutional destiny, the structural friction only widened. William was adamant that the future of the monarchy could not be held hostage by retrogressive palace politics, while Catherine remained deeply concerned about the personal toll this continuous internal sabotage was taking on their family and their young children. The history between Catherine and Camilla has always been marked by a complex, guarded coldness masked by formal decorum. While public appearances painted a picture of unity, sources close to the family reveal that Catherine was keenly aware of the subtle maneuvers designed to undermine her standing as the future queen. The tension was not merely about personal dislike, it was a fundamental clash of philosophies. Camilla represented an older style of palace maneuvering, one heavily reliant on backroom deals with traditional media and internal court influence. Catherine, on the other hand, relied on direct public engagement, flawless modern professionalism, and an unshakable moral center. As the king's health and operational priorities became central topics of discussion behind closed doors, the question of who would truly govern the day-to-day apparatus of the crown became an urgent, existential crisis. In the months leading up to the shocking announcement, private meetings between King Charles and Prince William grew increasingly tense. The Prince of Wales made it explicitly clear that he would not inherit a broken, faction-riddled institution. William reportedly presented his father with alarming evidence showing how confidential transition plans were being manipulated to create a dual structure of authority, one that would leave Camilla with sweeping powers even during the transition to the next reign. The realization that the palace was fragmenting into competing power centers horrified the king. He realized that the delicate balance he had tried to maintain for years was actively destroying the trust and stability of the monarchy from within. The palace was standing on the precipice of a full-scale constitutional disaster. The historical precedent was terrifying. Divided courts had crippled previous reigns, turning royal households into battlefield domains of paranoia and betrayal. King Charles knew that a decisive, ruthless strike was required to restore absolute order. The internal machinery was grinding to a halt, key advisors were playing double games, and the public's faith in the institution hung by a thread. The stage was set for a dramatic intervention that would shock the global media and permanently alter the royal bloodline. The feud was no longer a private family dispute handled over tea at Sandringham, it had evolved into an all-out war for total control, setting off a chain reaction that would culminate in the most explosive royal decree of the modern era. The fragile peace within the royal family shattered completely on a freezing Tuesday evening at Windsor Castle during a high-profile winter reception. What was supposed to be a flawless display of royal unity transformed into the ultimate catalyst for the monarchy's greatest modern crisis. The vast state reception rooms were filled with foreign dignitaries, diplomats, and high society figures, but away from the flickering chandeliers and classical music, the real story unfolded in the quiet, dimly lit corridor leading to the sovereign's private library. It was here that a covert conversation was overheard, one that would instantly trigger an unforgiving chain of events and force King Charles to execute an unprecedented internal purge. An aide attached to the Prince and Princess of Wales overheard Queen Camilla in a heated, low-voiced discussion with a senior constitutional advisor and a high-ranking courtier from her personal household. Camilla was heard explicitly demanding that no future transition plan or administrative handover concerning Prince William and Catherine be permitted to proceed without direct, mandatory oversight from her own office. She insisted that her team maintain veto power over long-term patronage reallocations, public messaging strategies, and even confidential scheduling for the future king and queen. The leaked details of this exchange were staggering. Camilla allegedly argued that William was moving too fast, carving out an independent realm of authority that threatened to overshadow the current reign, and that Catherine's overwhelming public influence needed to be systematically managed and contained. When word reached Prince William inside the castle, the reaction was swift and devastating. Those close to the prince describe his anger not as a sudden outburst, but as a cold, terrifying resolve. William did not make a scene in front of the assembled guests. Instead, he waited until the reception concluded, walked straight into the king's private study, and delivered a stark, non-negotiable ultimatum. He laid a thick red briefing folder onto Charles's desk, containing documented proof of delayed projects, intercepted communications, and altered briefing papers, and declared that he would no longer operate within a divided court. William made it brutally clear that if his wife's authority was continuously sabotaged and his own constitutional destiny treated as a threat to be managed, he and Catherine would step back entirely from official duties, leaving the crown to face the public alone. The king was shattered by the ultimatum. Looking at the evidence before him, Charles realized that his attempts to maintain harmony had allowed a dangerous, parallel power center to grow within his own home. At 12:17 a.m., in the dead of night, the king summoned his private secretary and instructed him to draft an emergency, legally binding succession declaration. The document was designed to be absolute, ruthless, and unassailable. It stripped all secondary households of transition oversight and vested total, exclusive authority over the future of the monarchy solely in the hands of Prince William and Catherine. To ensure no countermaneuvers could be executed, Charles issued a binding command. Queen Camilla and her advisors were to be kept completely in the dark until the document was signed and sealed. However, the major scandal was far from over, and the first devastating twist was about to drop. As news of the late-night meeting began to leak through encrypted messaging channels among palace staff, a series of frantic, panicked text messages from inside Clarence's house were accidentally forwarded to a broader press pool. The leaked messages contained panicked exchanges between senior aides, revealing that Camilla had caught wind of a secret document being drafted and had attempted to physically intercept the king's private secretary before the paperwork could be finalized. The leaked thread read, "She knows about the red folder. Security is outside the study. The king has locked the door. Do not send the digital draft over the internal server, he's cutting off access." The internet exploded within minutes. Social media platforms were inundated with the hashtag royal lockdown as screenshot fragments of the leaked staff exchanges went viral worldwide. Twitter threads racked up millions of impressions in under an hour, with royal commentators frantically speculating whether a quiet coup was underway inside Buckingham Palace. Major news outlets scrambled to verify the reports as the story broke across global headlines. The narrative was no longer just about family tension, it was an open battle for the control of the British state apparatus. Then came the first catastrophic twist that turned this scandal from a palace disagreement into a devastating national crisis. When the king's private secretary finally emerged from the study at 2 a.m. to deliver the finished declaration to the Royal Archive, it was discovered that a crucial, highly sensitive constitutional addendum had been mysteriously removed from the official file. The missing pages contained the specific legal clauses detailing the exact restrictions placed on Queen Camilla's future role, her financial allowances, and her official standing upon the conclusion of the current reign. The realization hit the king like a physical blow. Someone within the highest tier of palace security had breached the sovereign's private quarters and stolen the confidential clauses before the document could be officially recorded. Suspicion instantly fell upon Camilla's immediate circle, transforming Buckingham Palace into an active crime scene of paranoia and betrayal. The theft of the addendum meant that the secret war was no longer contained within the walls of Windsor or Buckingham Palace. The missing documents held information that, if leaked to the international press, possessed the power to sink public trust in the monarchy forever. The first major twist had landed, leaving the royal family trapped in a terrifying standoff where no one could be trusted, and every shadow held a potential traitor. The discovery of the missing constitutional addendum transformed a high-stakes palace dispute into a full-blown national security crisis. By 3:30 a.m., state security protocols were activated inside Buckingham Palace. The king's personal protection team locked down the private quarters, initiating a sweeping internal investigation. Officers conducted restricted searches of administrative offices, server logs, and communications networks. Panic rippled through the ranks of senior courtiers as it became terrifyingly clear that the perpetrator was someone with top-tier security clearance and unhindered access to the king's private study. As dawn broke over London, the crisis escalated beyond palace walls and spilled into the digital realm. A newly created anonymous account on X, formerly Twitter, under the handle @Monarchy Unsealed dropped a series of high-definition document scans that sent shockwaves across the globe. The leaked pages contained the exact missing clauses from the succession declaration. The text laid bare the full extent of the restrictions placed upon Queen Camilla, total exclusion from future succession governance, an immediate freeze on her household's ability to approve royal appointments, and a clause capping her administrative funding during any future transition phase. The internet erupted into complete chaos. Within 2 hours, #Royal Lakes, #Camilla Exiled, and #William and Kate took over the global trending charts. Over 50 million posts flooded social media as royal watchers, political commentators, and the public digested the raw, unfiltered evidence of a royal family at war with itself. A viral X thread from a prominent investigative journalist broke down the legal jargon, stating, "This isn't just an administrative update. This is King Charles stripping his own wife of institutional power and handing the keys to the kingdom exclusively to William and Catherine. A total palace wipeout." Celebrities, political figures, and media personalities across the world began weighing in on the explosive leak. Major news networks broke into regular broadcasting with emergency banners reading, "Confidential palace papers leaked online." High-profile commentators openly questioned the stability of the monarchy, with prominent media figures taking fiercely opposing sides. Supporters of Prince William and Catherine praised the move as a long-overdue modernization that secured the future of the crown, while defenders of Camilla called the maneuver a ruthless betrayal that publicly humiliated a reigning queen. Inside the palace, the atmosphere turned toxic. Prince William was furious over the security breach, demanding an immediate investigation into how sensitive state-level documents could be stolen from under the king's nose. He confronted his father in an intense, closed-door meeting, arguing that the leak proved how dangerous and compromised the internal apparatus had become. William made it clear that until the culprit was identified and purged from royal service, he and Catherine would assume direct operational oversight of their own security and administrative communications, effectively severing ties with the centralized palace staff. Queen Camilla remained barricaded in her private apartments, refusing to meet with senior advisors as the public backlash against her household mounted. Statements from fake insider accounts claiming to speak for her circle began circulating, accusing Prince William's team of orchestrating the leak themselves to vilify the Queen consort and force her out of public life. The media frenzy reached a fever pitch as international news outlets set up live broadcast camps outside the gates of Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace, recording every blacked-out vehicle moving through the grounds. Then came the second, utterly catastrophic reveal that completely inverted the narrative and brought the British monarchy to the edge of an unprecedented constitutional abyss. As cybersecurity experts and police investigators combed through the digital metadata of the Monarchy unsealed leaks to trace the IP address of the uploader, they made a discovery that left the king paralyzed with shock. The files had not been stolen or leaked by Queen Camilla's panicked courtiers, nor had they been leaked by an outside hacker. The digital footprint, encryption signatures, and physical access timestamps tied the original file export directly to an encrypted personal device registered within the private staff office of Prince William himself. The realization hit the royal household like a megaton blast. The narrative of William and Catherine being the passive victims of palace sabotage was instantly shattered. The evidence suggested that a rogue operative, or someone acting with high-level clearance inside the Prince of Wales's own circle, had intentionally leaked the devastating document to the public. The objective was clear: force King Charles's hand, publicly destroy Queen Camilla's standing beyond repair, and render the king's exclusive succession decree irreversible in the eyes of the global public. When King Charles was presented with the forensic digital report, he stared at the papers in absolute silence. The war between his wife and his heir was no longer a hidden struggle over administrative boundaries, it was a ruthless, calculated campaign played out on the world stage. With the public taking sides, the media demanding answers, and the digital leak proving a deliberate inside job, the king realized he was trapped in a trap of his own making. He had signed the document to save the monarchy's future, but the shocking reveal of who leaked it threatened to destroy the institution before that future could even begin. Following the catastrophic leak of the digital forensic report, the global narrative broke entirely free of palace control, igniting a media firestorm and public division on a scale not seen in modern history. What had been a guarded internal conflict erupted into a fierce, polarizing global spectacle. Within hours, news syndicates, political commentators, and millions of social media users worldwide lined up on opposing sides of a bitter debate, turning the British monarchy into a battleground of public opinion. Social media platforms dissolved into unprecedented chaos. On X, TikTok, and Instagram, hashtags like #TeamWales, #JusticeForCamilla, and #CrowningCrisis generated hundreds of millions of impressions per hour. Viral video essays dissected every detail of the leaked documents, analyzing the digital forensic signatures and debating the ethics of the leak. Online communities split sharply down the middle. Prince William and Catherine's supporters organized massive digital campaigns, declaring the Prince of Wales a visionary leader who took ruthless, necessary measures to protect the crown's future from internal sabotage. Conversely, defender networks for Queen Camilla posted scathing threads accusing the Wales household of orchestrating a cold, calculated smear campaign designed to publicly humiliate a reigning Queen consort and isolate King Charles. The controversy quickly spread into mainstream political and media institutions. Major news networks dismantled their regular programming to air round-the-clock panel discussions featuring constitutional experts, former diplomats, and high-profile commentators. In the United Kingdom, political figures faced barrage after barrage of questions during press conferences, with broadcast journalists demanding to know whether Parliament would intervene in what was being termed an operational coup within the royal household. International media outlets seized on the scandal, framing the drama as an existential breakdown of the British establishment. Front pages across the globe featured stark black and white portraits of Charles, Camilla, William, and Catherine alongside bold headlines declaring, "A house divided and the battle for the crown." Celebrity figures, public influencers, and media personalities eagerly joined the fray, further fueling the viral obsession. Prominent podcast hosts devoted multi-hour episodes to analyzing the psychological warfare behind the scenes, drawing parallels to historic royal betrayals and palace purges. Entertainment icons and social commentary channels posted reaction videos that racked up tens of millions of views in a matter of hours, dissecting the nonverbal cues from recent public appearances to prove that the feud had been brewing in plain sight for months. Every minor detail, from an averted gaze on a balcony to a slight delay in a joint car arrival, was scrutinized, amplified, and debated by an audience hungry for every drop of drama. Public sentiment on the streets grew increasingly volatile. Outside the gates of Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle, large crowds gathered under the watchful eyes of heavy security personnel. Supporters carried banners displaying portraits of William and Catherine, chanting slogans calling for a swift transition to the new era. Nearby, counter-protesters held signs defending Queen Camilla, condemning what they called a media-driven trial that threatened to undermine the authority of the king. The physical gathering of opposing groups created an atmosphere of intense public friction, forcing law enforcement to erect barrier lines across the palace forecourts to prevent confrontations between rival factions. Inside media industry circles, the backlash against the royal family's handling of the crisis reached a fever pitch. Senior editors and veteran royal correspondents openly criticized the palace press office for its total failure to contain the narrative, calling the situation an absolute communications catastrophe. A joint statement issued by a coalition of media analysts warned that the public airing of operational betrayals had fundamentally damaged the aura of stability that the monarchy relied upon to survive. Critics argued that regardless of who eventually emerged victorious in the war for control, the public's trust in the institution had been severely eroded, exposing the palace as a fragile house of cards ruled by paranoia and ambition. Yet, despite the intense public division and industry backlash, the central question remained unanswered: would King Charles enforce the exclusive succession plan and purge the suspected leakers, or would he yield to the mounting pressure and dismantle the declaration before the monarchy collapsed entirely? As the global storm raged, palace sources hinted that an unprecedented emergency address was being prepared behind closed doors, an announcement that would either restore absolute order or deliver the final, lethal blow to the royal family as we know it. As night fell over London, the suffocating tension inside Buckingham Palace reached a point of absolute critical mass. The global firestorm was raging out of control, the public was locked in bitter division, and the digital evidence linking the leak to an internal device within Prince William's immediate circle remained an active, unexploded bomb threatening to destroy the monarchy's credibility forever. King Charles knew that every passing hour without a definitive resolution brought the institution closer to total collapse. At 9:45 p.m., the king summoned Prince William, Catherine, and Queen Camilla into his private audience room for what was intended to be the final, decisive confrontation to settle the succession once and for all. The atmosphere inside the room was icy and terrifyingly quiet. Security personnel stood outside the locked double doors, under strict orders to allow no aides, courtiers, or private secretaries to enter. King Charles sat behind his mahogany desk, the signed succession declaration resting directly in front of him alongside the damning forensic report. Queen Camilla sat rigidly to his left, her expression cold and unreadable. Prince William and Catherine stood side by side opposite the desk, their posture resolute, refusing to take a seat. The king looked between his heir, his daughter-in-law, and his wife, preparing to issue an ultimatum that would either enforce the new succession framework or strip everyone involved of their operational power. Charles cleared his throat and began to speak, his voice heavy with the exhaustion of a monarch trapped in an impossible war. He declared that while the succession declaration naming William and Catherine as exclusive successors was legally binding, he could not and would not allow the monarchy to be governed through blackmail, digital sabotage, and public purges. The king demanded an immediate confession regarding who authorized the leak of the confidential addendum, warning that if the culprit within William's household was not surrendered immediately, he would execute his royal prerogative to suspend the entire declaration indefinitely. Prince William stepped forward, his eyes locking onto his father's with an unshakable resolve. But before the Prince of Wales could utter a single word, Catherine gently reached out, placed a hand on his arm, and stepped ahead of him. The Princess of Wales did not flinch. She looked directly at King Charles, then turned her gaze toward Queen Camilla, and delivered the ultimate, mind-bending final twist that turned the entire investigation on its head. Catherine revealed that the forensic digital report linking the leak to her and William's office was completely real, but the narrative surrounding it was a masterfully constructed lie. She placed a second, encrypted tablet onto the king's desk. On the screen was a detailed digital paper trail showing that the file export from William's private network had not been an act of betrayal by their staff. It had been remotely triggered using stolen administrative security credentials that had been secretly cloned 3 weeks earlier by a double-agent courtier operating directly inside Queen Camilla's private household. Camilla's team had not merely attempted to block the succession plan behind closed doors, they had intentionally set up the leak from William's network to frame the Wales household for treasonous public sabotage, forcing the king to invalidate the document out of anger. Queen Camilla's face paled as the undeniable digital evidence filled the screen. The room plunged into a silence so dense it was almost impossible to breathe. The realization settled over King Charles with terrifying clarity: the internal sabotage was far deeper, darker, and more sinister than he had ever imagined. The Queen's Circle had executed a high-stakes sting operation that had backfired catastrophically, exposing their own willingness to burn the monarchy down just to preserve their fading influence. King Charles slowly closed the folder. He looked at Camilla, then at William and Catherine, realizing that the old balance of power was dead. But just as the king picked up his pen to sign the absolute enforcement order, permanently exiling Camilla's advisors and cementing William and Catherine's exclusive rule, a sharp, urgent knock rattled the heavy audience room doors. An emergency courier, pale and breathless, stepped inside despite the king's explicit orders, holding a red diplomatic dispatch folder marked "Eyes Only, Immediate Sovereign Attention." The courier handed the file to Charles. As the king opened the dispatch and read the first 3 lines, his hand began to tremble violently. He looked up at William and Catherine with a look of pure dread, a reaction that proved the nightmare was far from over. Whatever was written inside that red dispatch holds a secret so dangerous that even the exclusive succession plan might not survive it. What was inside that classified message? And how will William and Catherine respond when the true threat to the throne is finally unmasked? Stay tuned for the next update, because the real war for the crown has only just begun. This is the ultimate turning point for the British monarchy, and the drama is far from over. What was written inside that classified red diplomatic dispatch that left King Charles visibly shaken? Did Queen Camilla's faction have one final, nuclear secret hidden up their sleeves, or is there an even greater outside threat targeting Prince William and Catherine before they can officially take full operational command of the crown? The balance of power has shifted, but in a game this dangerous, no victory comes without a devastating price. Now, we want to hear from you. Whose side are you on in this historic battle for the throne? Do Do you believe King Charles made the right call by naming William and Catherine as his exclusive, absolute successors to protect the future of the monarchy? Or do you feel Queen Camilla was unfairly targeted and pushed out by ruthless palace politics? Drop your thoughts, theories, and predictions in the comments section below. Let's get the debate started. If you found this breakdown shocking and want to stay ahead of every major royal update, hit that like button right now. Most importantly, don't forget to click subscribe and turn on all post notifications so you never miss a single second when the next part of this explosive story drops. The secret behind that red dispatch is about to break, and trust us, you will not want to miss what comes next. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned.